Hello, good afternoon. I'm Veronica Honorevoli, and I work for the Council for the International Exchange of Scholars in DC. I don't directly work with the student program. I work mainly with faculty and administrators, but I am frequently crossing over to the student program and will do my best to try to answer any of your questions that you may have along the way. So feel free, since obviously it's a small group, we can informally have discussion at any time. Mainly, the folks that do run the student program are with the Institute of International Education, and I'm with the same institute as well, but just a division separately, and they operate in New York, right outside the UN headquarters. So I just was curious initially, how many of you right now are applying for a Fulbright for the October deadline? No? Okay. I can tell there was a panic. There would have been a run up here. But are you considering for next year to apply possibly?
Try to move the mic a little closer to
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Bottles.
Okay.
Okay, just curious. I'll just give a basic overview though about the program initially for you. And then get a little bit into the types of grants that are out there, the different programs, and what's new, particularly for this academic cycle, but we'll continue on for the next one as well to think about. And then the application process, and anything you have along the way, questions, feel free to ask instead of waiting to the end, that's fine.
And I think we do have at least one international student.
Oh, great.
So if you
Okay.
could also hear some of the discussion towards how they can apply once they go back home.
Sure, I'll do my best. So the grants that we have are a variety to choose from for either studying or doing research or both at the same time. For graduating seniors or graduate students, career professionals, usually about 2 to 3 years outside of getting their degree. That's the time frame we look at. Teachers, mainly within English teaching, and creative and performing artists. So we have grants to support all those categories within the rubric of student program. Just a quick overview of who's who. I indicated before all these acronyms already. I'm with CIES, Division of the Institute of International Education in New York, who mainly oversees the student program. All Fulbright programs, with the exception of Fulbright Hayes, are sponsored by the Department of State. So these are just mainly websites that you can check out if you haven't already that give overviews about the programs from the State Department perspective. Little history lesson. The founder, Senator Fulbright, is from Wisconsin, and early in his career received a Rhodes Scholarship to the United Kingdom. And that experience was life-changing for him, and he realized the importance of studying abroad. So later in his years, he developed with funds from after World War II, the creation of the first international exchange program at the State Department, thus Fulbright. So some 60-some years later, it's developed into a program that supports over 155 countries for both exchanges as well for students, faculty, administrators. It's expanded tenfold. So I'm only planting the seed right now to think broadly, not just about getting support as a student, but later on, if you do decide to go into the academic world or in the professional world, that Fulbright is still there for you. Basic eligibility requirements. You must be a U.S. citizen at the time of application. You cannot be a dual citizen of the country that you're applying to. And you cannot be a resident of the country you're applying to. It seems simple, but trust me, sometimes it gets complicated. Also, alumni, thinking now, again, bigger picture, if you receive a grant, you can always reapply. This is a new thing that's been lifted. There used to be limitations, but now alum can reapply. Again, but it can only be for a different country, so you can't try to go back to the same country you originally received a grant. Keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, you must be a senior at least. Graduating, so you must have at least a bachelor's degree or be on the verge of receiving one at the start of your grant. You cannot have a PhD though at the time of application. If you do, then you should apply for the Scholar Program that I run down in DC. The proficiency in language requirement will vary depending on what country you're looking at, and particularly if you're looking for support with research, that's where it's pivotal that you have some level of fluency so that you can prove that you can actually carry out the research. Feel free to interrupt with questions too, by the way. What we provide. So you'll receive initial payments that cover your airfare round trip. You'll receive a monthly stipend, and again, carefully reading through the website, which I'm going to refer to in a minute because these slides are very brief, and the website is where you're going to find everything and anything. So you'll see the specific benefits that each country provides within the website. But the overall framework is essentially the same no matter what. So you'll get support for language lessons, as well as enrichment activities. So beyond just the scope of what you're proposing to study or do as far as research in the country or teach English, you also have opportunities usually through a U.S. embassy or commission or your host and neighboring host institutions to be invited to do a variety of activities while you're abroad. And so that will be supported as well with Fulbright. So just food for thought. So this is partially true. There's two types of grants. They really simplified this overview, but that's why I'm going to refer to the website in a second because we have more than this. But essentially the main programs that we have are to support research and studies, so you can do both. And we have English teaching assistantships. Is there anyone here interested in the ETA program? No? Okay. I just want to know for where I'm going to focus. This is our time frame. I'm guessing that you're all matriculated students at the moment. No alum? Okay, great. Makes it even easier. So usually the process for those that are still in school is to have an early, the application deadline is actually slightly earlier. So you'll see that the deadline normally this year is October 14th, but your campus, I think it's September 13th.
So we actually have two campus deadlines.
Oh.
July 1 is what we call our priority deadline, and it gets people started early and
Okay.
gets them interviewed by the first week of the semester.
Okay.
And then the regular campus deadline is September 14th.
Okay.
Regardless of what day of the week that falls on.
Okay. All right.
So it helps
Yeah.
to get people
Push them
started
along
early.
further so it's all set
Yeah.
by the October deadline for sure.
Calling people priority really makes them feel good.
Okay. Well, we have that. That's one way that students are applying, and then there are those that are alum that have the opportunity as well if they so choose. Sometimes by proximity, it's their only option to apply at large. We usually still advise the alum to contact their home institution and let them know that they're applying. It's always helpful.
At this very moment, there's two alums who are Skype interviewing today.
Really?
Through the campus process. So
Perfect.
that's why I'm like
That's good. So essentially, this is the framework for how the process works. And final notifications vary because it depends on the country and also funding when we find out, which seems to get later and later in the year. But March through June is the rough estimate. So it's pretty out there, and you're thinking ahead always in the next year time frame. So I think these are all pretty assumed qualifications that I'm hoping that all of you have. But the demonstration of leadership ability, high level of academic or professional achievement, one of the things that I always like to dwell on, because this is universal for all Fulbright, when you're developing your application, to consider what, you can have all these qualifications, but there's one missing element. Keeping in mind, who's the sponsor, what are the origins of the program? The overall overarching belief of the program is for mutual exchange. It's for someone who can serve as essentially a diplomat for the United States. During your time there, that's what we're looking for. So speaking on what your interests are, your passions, how it would benefit you is one thing. Speaking larger on how it will benefit your institutions that you're going to visit, and as well as your home is another. But then thinking that extra layer of thought that I think is very valuable to considering your application is, what is the long-term benefit that this would play in the relationships between the United States and that country? So it's kind of hard to sometimes envision what you've been thinking about, your passions, and how they can really be applicable in that way. But taking a step back, it's always helpful to just show that you have that open-mindedness, that you're willing to look at the bigger picture of your work. So that's my 2 cents I would add on that side. This is the ETA program. I'll skip over this since unless there's folks over there that are interested in the ETA. Do I hear an objection? I'm trying to get some activity over there. If there's
My one comment about ETA here on campus is we have a great Language and Culture Institute, and if anyone even wants to kind of explore that, definitely connect with our Language and Culture Institute, and they have ongoing international students who are here to learn English.
Okay.
And sitting in on those classes and observing it can give you a perspective of
what it's like,
how challenging it is. Not just I speak English, so therefore I can teach it, but also that there's transferable skills. If you've taught something else, you can think about how that could be used for that. So
Are there specific qualifications for that program? Like, do you have to have TESOL or what's the other one?
So essentially, it's important that they have a basic understanding of not just the English language, but also a little bit about U.S. culture, how to teach. Having prior experience, if you've had some type of teaching experience, is also useful to demonstrate. Your language proficiency, though, of that country is not as required because what they're normally looking for 9 times out of 10 is that you're spending most of your time speaking English to them. So that's less of a requirement from the typical application. So but otherwise, it's the same criteria. And I wasn't ETA, but I taught English. That's how I through Japan's ETA program, so to speak. Jet program. So if anybody does have questions, I can kind of bond on that. But it is a transferable skill set, and it's an interesting way to get introduced to a country and culture. So consider that.
one of our last ETAs was to Malaysia, and she was a pre-med student. And one of the things that I found interesting about her application was she talked about the value of learning English to the healthcare people in Malaysia who work in the healthcare profession.
Very much. Yeah.
Because Malaysia does have a medical tourism component to it. So that's, she's just demonstrated that she has dug into the history and culture and current state of the country. And that if they know English, there is a tangible increase in their pay scale.
Yeah, it's a very valuable skill set, and even right now with the, considering, like I said, long-term, a scholar program, we have a global TEFL program as well for continuing teaching of English, because it's a valuable skill set across disciplines that a lot of countries are requesting. It's a good way to get to know. Basic application components. Again, I'm sure if some of you have already explored our website, you may have caught this, but I'm going to switch over actually to the website because it's a little more in-depth on each requirement. But you have your basic personal data, but the statement of purpose, the essay, is very short if you're noticing all these requirements, a 2-page maximum. So succinctly describing your work and your passions, your interests, how is it valuing again, on the larger scale, for public diplomacy, trying to fit that into a short essay can be a great challenge. So starting early and getting as many eyes on it as possible, and that's where your university faculty advisor, your campus reps, they're very valuable to have. They've seen many applications come before them, and they can work with you to try to succinctly describe and define what you want to pursue. So, 3 references as well. That's something I would encourage you initially to try. If you had to look at sequentially of what to work on, I would actually put that a little bit ahead of the game. Sometimes referees can have different schedules that don't subside with the deadline, so making sure you've got them in pocket early on is very helpful.
I'll also comment on the references are not required July 1 for a deadline. It's all the other components.
Because they come in.
Because the references should be written when the referee has seen all of your other materials.
Right.
Has a better idea of
Right.
your project and scope.
Okay.
But
And keeping in mind though, it is the summertime as well, and so the communications may be slower. Right.
start in May.
So a couple of things, these are just checkpoints to make sure. Of course, this does not apply now for the ETA program, but it applies for all the other student programs on getting a letter of affiliation. We just put very much on the top on letterhead. I cannot tell you how many times we've received emails. We cannot accept that. Or on a plain Word document, cannot accept that. Try to get it in a PDF. That's probably the best bet. Just to ensure that it was legitimate. The contact, who will advise and or mentor you. If you do not have a host country contact, trying to figure out creative ways to find an advisor. That's why, again, I refer back to your campus, also looking at alum as a resource of value, seeing who has already gone from your school, who's been in a similar field that has pursued work in that country, who would have that knowledge and can introduce you to the programs. Doing the background research is essential. So on that list, again, going back to that old slide of what you need to prepare, I'd move this up to probably number 1. Because it does take time.
I'll also chime in that for the July 1, the priority deadline, we don't need letters of affiliation for that deadline, but we want to know where they are in the process of securing an affiliation.
Right. So there's also, again, looking at the country descriptions online, it can be helpful to send if there's issues with affiliations for a variety of reasons, to also contact my counterparts at IIE. The regional program officer can help facilitate conversations as well with the institution if there's any problems. Okay, so yes, I don't know why they put no paper. I guess we did have paper for a very long time.
I remember the paper days. I
How long
remember
ago was
mailing,
Not too long ago.
2008
Oh my
was
God,
probably
that's
the last
scary.
time
I
we
can
got
imagine.
mail-in button. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
All right, well, I'm very glad that I wasn't around when they had paper. But essentially online, let me just show you the website here. And how many have already explored the website? Sort of. Kind of. It's got a lot of pictures. The Control Alt Tab. Alt Tab. Thanks. All right, so I'm going to navigate in my own way here, just so you can examine, because really the bulk of information is embedded in this website. So navigating it is essential. Obviously, here's where I have all the application components. It'll speak to what's required for each component. So making sure you carefully read through each area, and what, like I just was going through in the slide, this is in more depth though, of pointing out each key. So getting a third party to read through what you draft is essential. Have them read this paragraph and then have them read your statement to see if it matches up.
I'll put a giant plug in for the Writing Center here at Virginia Tech. If you can work with them early, they love to get people who, when is this due? 2 months from now? They can work with you. They're used to seeing people who have an essay for an assignment or for a class due tomorrow, and so they love working with people with personal statements weeks and months in advance.
Notice the emphasis on weeks and months. So, I mentioned before that slide, it showed what is the Fulbright student program support. I wanted to show you, obviously there's more than just the ETA program and study and research. We have a couple of new programs that are very new, actually just got piloted, and one of them that doesn't follow the normal deadline. So this is only relevant though to those that the Fulbright MTVU award is for those that are interested in the music profession or the entertainment industry, and that deadline is actually a little different. It's February 27th, but all other programs are due in October. So that's the only exception. And the other really interesting program that just got launched, the Fulbright Clinton. That's if you're interested in public administration and foreign policy, public diplomacy. So carefully read through the criteria of each different program of what they will support and what they're looking for. But the general gist, the main bread and butter, so to speak, of the student program is to support study and research, the core academic application.
And are they going to continue the digital storytelling? The National Geographic?
Yes.
Okay. That's really cool.
Yes. It was an overwhelming, I think they received like 800 applications for, I think it was 5 slots.
But
So.
if you're into that, don't let those numbers discourage you. We've got a great contact in town, Andy Morkawi, who does digital storytelling.
Oh, cool.
Holly Lisko too, and,
ICAP.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's resources on here to develop that.
And it's like the lottery, you can't win if you don't play, so.
But I can tell you also what awards are undersubscribed, what we mean as we haven't traditionally received that many quality applications for. So if they're something that strikes your fancy, go for it. So these past 2 years, the undersubscribed areas that we've noticed have been for a couple of programs. So for STEM fields across the board, we're looking for more applicants in STEM, particularly though for the Netherlands and Indonesia. Keep that in mind. Mexico is, I'm not sure what level, again, you're here, but for they're looking primarily for graduate degree award support by national business grants. So looking for folks that are doing graduate studies in business. Okay, any takers? No? Okay.
We had one a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, keep that in mind that we are looking for more. Singapore is looking for candidates that are doing studying or research in urban planning and sustainable design. So these are awards that really have not gotten so popular, but just laying it out there in case this is someone's niche area and a light bulb goes off. You never know. But really when you apply, you have to select one country. You have to decide why that country. You can't just pull out of the hat and say, oh, because it's cool. Yeah, you know, it seems like a place I always wanted to visit. Not good enough. We need to see that you have demonstrated interest in learning the culture, that there is a benefit to that country in having you. So not just what you gain, but what do they gain from having you. So be careful on what you pick. Again, it's just seeing how it also complements your field, doing the legwork, the research to see what is that specific country doing in my area that I'm interested in pursuing, and how will this highlight and benefit the field and the work that I'm doing.
Yes.
Are there any countries or programs that are oversubscribed that you want to characterize that way? Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I represent the East Asia Pacific region, so I have more knowledge on my region, but I imagine my European counterparts would be answering on that one, and saying United Kingdom, you're right. Australia, New Zealand are very popular, and again, it's because a lot of it's because they're English-speaking countries, so the language requirement is not needed, so right off the bat you're going to get a higher amount of candidates. But still not to be detracting from those countries, particularly if you're looking and reading the award descriptions very carefully, they'll suggest, they'll place preferences, they'll say what areas of fields or they're looking for folks in. So if you're an environmental scientist and they're placing an emphasis on environmental science in the country and you're aware that they're doing some breakthrough research or funding new programs and initiatives, bear that in mind, that you're speaking to something that they're interested in. So having that background, that research into the country's needs in your area and what you're looking at doing is very important. So.
Could you show them the statistics button or link that's up in the upper right-hand corner? It's a small font, but it's right there. But when we talk about kind of people wanting to know how many, if I do apply to the United Kingdom or
yeah, you
to
can.
Moldova, what are my chances?
Yeah.
Will Control Plus increase the size of that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in
685
Luxembourg, one person applied for 2 awards?
939.48 for the most recent year. That was the stat.
Luxembourg had a problem this year. One person applied for 2 awards?
Realizing, yeah, I'm not quite sure what Luxembourg was doing wrong there. But this is not to detract, or try to deter you from going for the grant. To me, it's a great experience to go through the process in general and have, regardless of what the outcome is, that you successfully went through the process, that you have these materials in hand that can be applicable to other grants that you're seeking funding for too. I mean, I don't want to say that you're not going to, your chances are you're not going to get the grant. Don't ever think like that. There are a variety of factors that are at play when candidates are being reviewed to consider. So if you're high caliber, you're really passionate, you're very focused and interested, go for it. You've got nothing to lose. Maybe some sleep, but trust me, you'll make it up.
Last year we had 2 candidates for the United Kingdom, and they both ended up being finalists, despite the odds.
Right.
And they were actually both applying for the same university. That's impressive, isn't it?
They beat the odds on that one.
They had compelling reasons to go there.
Yeah, both candidates.
Both of them.
Did they know each other?
Yeah, they lived in the same hall.
Oh, okay.
But they were different disciplines
Mm-hmm.
and different really strong reasons for why Leicester was the best place for them to study.
So were they ultimately selected, or were they just?
They were not, but when you're a finalist for the UK,
That's a big deal.
that's a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I didn't read till.
And you
the
can
end,
always
but-
put that on your resume.
And one of them got
That's a
funding
big deal.
anyway from the university.
Okay.
So he wouldn't have gotten funding from the university
Right,
had he not.
had he
been
not
there.
gotten a
Okay.
finalist position. Yeah. Some other helpful things to look at for factoring in. So under the About, you can look, there's actually resources here that you can listen to recorded webinars, there's videos, some tutorials that are excellent resources. Utilizing the alum, again, are key to getting a better sense of what is it really like on the ground, what is it like being a Fulbrighter, just useful tips from people that have done the application process to help you. It's always a good resource. I'm not sure if any questions though? We're doing good?
When you're making your affiliation contacts. Do you have any advice for how to reach out and initially make that contact?
Yes, so going back to the components, if you already have summarized an abstract of what you're proposing to do, that's helpful so you can share it with them. Doing an introductory letter about yourself, very brief, and something they can look at to see this is what she wants to accomplish, so they can then direct you if they're not the right contact, at least to assist you. I know my knowledge more for the Scholar program, and that's usually how it runs, but
Also consider culture, like how that, if just directly contacting a professor
That's true.
culturally might not be appropriate. But if you have a faculty member who knows you really well, even though they don't know a potential candidate, them providing the introduction is a good way to reach out rather than just a straight cold call. Some places may get many of these requests and they don't know how invested you are. And don't assume if they haven't replied that that's a no. Maybe they completely missed your email, or it's summertime and
right.
most countries, the universities are empty in the summertime.
I always say having persistency is always helpful. At least to get through to me, it's helpful. So, but yeah, keeping aware of different cultures is definitely important. If you have, again, utilizing alum are a really good tool. So if they've been there, people know who they are, they can introduce you, kind of like a networking strategy you need to come up with to engage with them. And like I said, having already devised a plan of what you're going to do that's very succinct, so they can scan it very quickly and see if you're really dedicated, if you're really know what you're talking about, so that they would be interested in you. That's always a helpful way. So it does take time. So it is essential to work on this as soon as you can. I'm going to actually flip back. Control. Hello.
Alt tab.
There we go. I'm like, this thing just popped up. All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, though, another resource is our IE folks. My colleague, my counterpart for East Asia Pacific, Jonathan Akeley, I've worked with. So you can always shoot him an email. Usually it's helpful to get your campus rep, your Fulbright advisor, to write to them or copy them as well on the message. It's more effective to get through them. But usually this is for most of the questions you should be able to get answers to here. Your university is a great resource. There could be a possible in-country situation that you want to receive the latest update from these folks for. We've had situations like our Afghanistan program having situations that were literally changing by the minute. So contacting the IE counterpart who's engaged with the State Department is one way that you can find out if the program is going to be a green light or not. But for the most part, that's very rare that happens. But that was just one example that I could come up with that actually happened a few weeks ago. These are all of the million ways that you can stay connected and learn about alum and see what they're doing, reach out to folks and develop the contacts for the particular country that you're looking for. So we've got blogs, Twitter. Again, the Vimeo, the YouTube feed has a lot of different discussion sessions that have happened or alumni presentations that are really excellent to listen to and navigate through. Their search features, so you can try to look for that particular country in area as well that you're interested in. But for the most part, that sums it up. If I do seem pretty general, it's because there's a lot of information within each award in each country. So if you have particular questions, feel free to ask. But We also have, though, luckily, your campus advisors are here to help you. So I mainly work with students, not on occasion, not constantly. I always get the ones that confuse the programs, the scholar programs. So that's when I get to be involved. But any in particular?
Yeah, I have a question. It said that one of the requirements was being a U.S. citizen, but I know that there are some grants for international students, and I was wondering if you could tell us more.
So the visiting program, that's for students that are non-U.S. citizens that are looking to study in the United States. So similarly, they would pursue an application through their university and their either the U.S. Embassy, if there's not a commission for Fulbright that operates there, to apply. So it would be the similar program, but the inverse for coming to the United States, and they would, for university placement, would work with IIE New York once they're selected for placement at an institution here in the U.S.
Do you know if there's any visa time frame restrictions on that? Ian might be able to help with that too. If you're here as a student on a certain kind of visa and then you go back to your country and you want to apply to come back here, do you know if there's any, like I know there's some.
Well, it depends what visa you're on, but if you're on a J1 with a home residency requirement, which is pretty unlikely here for a student, there's a 2-year wait.
But I think some of our exchange students, if I'm not mistaken, are here on J visas.
Yeah, but you'd have to assess whether that restriction applies or not.
Okay.
And they can come back on Fs anyways.
Okay.
Even if that restriction applies.
Do you have are they applying or are they?
No, I'm in F1.
And I would direct them to this blue page.
So you would go home and then apply for a Fulbright to come back here? Is that what you're
Well, because right now
contemplating?
Here, let's
So
see.
specific.
I'm in my second year of grad school, so next year I'm thinking about a PhD. So I'm wondering how that would work if that would apply to Fulbright.
But you have to be a U.S. citizen to get the grant? Yeah, so if we have
For
a
the
match.
U.S. program side.
So let's clarify, are you talking about a Fulbright to go from the U.S. to abroad or from abroad to come to the U.S.?
From abroad to come to the US.
Okay, so that you apply
Yeah.
for the embassy or the commission
Yes.
in your home country,
Yeah.
and they will tag you with the J1 visa with a 2-year home residency requirement. She'll never be able to get away before.
Right.
And just like in the U.S. program where every answer depends on the country, I believe that for the foreign student Fulbright,
They have their own
the application
requirements.
depends on the country. So they may say if you're currently in the United States, you cannot apply. But I think it depends on the
It
country.
depends on the country.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But each country does have its own contact information, right? So you would be
Yeah.
able to check with the
Yes.
commission or the embassy.
Yeah, don't
and
rule
get
it
their-
out, but
I
Right.
don't know that I've ever heard of anybody actually in a degree-seeking program in the United States on a Fulbright. So I'm not sure what,
we've got some international students here on Fulbright right now.
in degree-seeking
Yes.
status, okay. well,
Yeah,
that's
I
possible.
have a colleague of mine who that's how she
Okay,
got support for a PhD. So, but the time parameters, again, it's depending on what they set up as restrictive. Like someone will
So-
say you couldn't have been, you have to be a year or 2 years out from when you were in the United States, or you could only have been in the United States for X amount of time.
would a good resource
Other
be the
parameters.
U.S. Embassy website in your home country, and then just search for Fulbright, because they should have the information on the Fulbright
Right, it's
program
usually
for
their
your
public
country.
affairs section of their website where they'll list it. Or if it's a, what country?
Morocco.
Morocco, yeah, so that would be the embassy, U.S. Embassy.
And there are 2 graduate students from Morocco
Yeah.
who are here on Fulbright now. Have you met them?
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Perfect.
They might help to make that contact for you. Husband.
Yeah, because if they received the grant, then they had to work with someone there at the embassy, so they would provide that assistance in introducing you. That's a good question. It gets gray and fuzzy with the visa process, so I understand.
And are there countries for whom the participation is restricted or limited?
Here, I'll put the. So as you'll notice, not all countries are represented. So they either, 9 times out of 10 is because of funding.
Okay.
So making sure you look through which countries can support Fulbright as a program is important. It's a binational program, so it has to be U.S. and that country contributing funds, and often sometimes it's not ever 50-50, but a lot of the countries though don't have enough. Like Laos, for example, wavered on and off with having a Fulbright program for many years, and now only offers actually student programs, but it doesn't support scholars. So it varies. So particularly the Middle East, North Africa, right now we're kind of keeping an eye on. Sometimes there's closures depending on if the U.S. Embassy has to close, but otherwise it's 155 countries, so hopefully your country will be on that list. The daunting task of applying. Just set up Outlook calendar reminders, start doing it in advance, put it in your calendar what you need to get done. Yeah.
So if you're undergraduate, when is usually a good year or a good time to apply? Because you don't technically have your bachelor's degree yet.
Most of the time we advise when you enter your senior year.
Okay.
It's also a little bit easier, I think, in your senior year to take the
Right.
time to think about it and lay out the map of what you would like to pursue after you graduate. So I would advise when you start hitting your first semester of your senior year.
And how long do these programs usually last? Are they like 6? Because the brochure is like 2 or 6 weeks, or do they last? Like how long do the grants?
So you can apply, I think it's between a semester, so it could be, depending on the country, I think it's 3 to 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of them operate on trimesters, so that's why it's a lot. But the minimum is 3 months. Good questions.
Aren't there a few other programs too, like there's some that are master's programs overseas?
Right, so. So here's how it's broken down. So they have support for graduate degree programs. Mexico, they'll have 3. I mentioned the one that was undersubscribed earlier for business. So if you're going for your master's in business, Mexico will support your funding for your graduate studies. So keeping an eye on, clicking on each country, seeing how they're broken down, what they're supporting. We even have internships that are included as support. So it's really an array of different activities. It's not just like my original slideshow, just study and research. It can be from the Clinton Fellowship, for example, is actually looking to be an assistant for an advisor within a government office of that country. So that's very cool. And that's a unique program in and of itself. So think not just studying and research, think about internships, being in an assistantship position as well for support.
Is that eligible for international students?
No, the Clinton, it's again a part of the U.S. student program. Right. Sorry. But I'm sure, Morocco could maybe have their own. A lot of countries, their Ministry of Education, have similarly developed programs using Fulbright as a model, or many of other State Department education exchange programs as a model. So, or you can try to push them.
I'll create
For graduate study, one of the things to keep in mind is that Fulbright is a 10-month or in the case of the UK, a 1-year program, and if a certain degree takes more than 1 year to be
Right,
thinking
you
about
need
how
to-
to pay for the remainder of it. That may be just acknowledging that, you'll be seeking other sources of funding, assistantship, loans, et cetera, but.
Yeah, and
many
that's definitely become more relevant, especially for the visiting side, for the student programs, because the cost of higher education here can be very high. So we've had requests for extensions and grant and whatnot, and you can request, but it's really on a case-by-case basis. There's no guarantee. So making sure that you can justify that you can continue finishing your program without support is important. It's kind of the elephant in the room, actually, I forgot to mention. Thank you.
But if you address it,
Right.
then you have a stronger application than everyone else who just kind of ignored it.
Right, because you're acknowledging it, yes, it exists. It's not uh-oh later on. What countries are we thinking about here? What areas? I'm curious. Who do we have represented here today? Okay. None?
Well, I can't apply for Fulbright. I'm an international, so but I would have done Indonesia.
Oh yeah. Where are you from?
Serbia, but I live in Morocco.
Okay. So you're Serbian national though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're going to share this information with your friends?
It's awesome.
But to look at the visiting side, I mean, also as a consideration.
Casey, do you have some ideas?
I don't know. I could go back to Guatemala, or the overprescribed United Kingdom. Maybe get programs there, but I don't know. So,
Have you looked at Haiti? Because I know at one point in time you did.
not so much anymore.
So I'm guessing no an affiliation with the Guatemala before?
Couple of times.
Okay.
So are there some restrictions or preferences for that? I thought I had seen something about that, like if you had an affinity for a particular country, you may not necessarily be considered for that. Unless perhaps you just like recently returned from study abroad experience, but like if you're saying, well, I want to go to Vietnam because I've got family over there, then that would probably rule you out.
Well, again, looking at the mission, the overall mission, the purpose of your research, it cannot just be personally vested, right? This is government funding to help support the advancement of the field as well, and advancement of relations between the countries. So just because you have family there or personal ties is not enough.
But don't rule it out.
But it's, yes,
Yeah.
again, it can work to your advantage because if you have, it's trying to show that it, for heritage candidates in particular, it can, I always advise to think about it of what are the benefits of of knowing two cultures already, helping to know the similarities as well as the differences for bridging relations. Perhaps you have that advantage. So if you're doing research too that is very much enveloped in having that knowledge, that basis, that's half the battle. So that can serve as a great strength as well. But making sure that you're showing, again, when I initially showed the slides to you, the aspects of not just benefiting yourself. Let's look at it outside that box. So long as you're putting that justification, then it doesn't really hurt you if you are a heritage candidate or if you've spent prior time in that country. It really depends on the work that you're doing and how you utilize that background, that experience, to show your feasibility of carrying out the work.
We had a candidate who was first generation American, Korean American, and he was selected for South Korea for an ETA, and he didn't hide that connection. If anything, he highlighted that, kind of living life on the hyphen of this dual identity, and that he knew going to Korea he would be viewed as an American despite his physical appearance.
Absolutely.
And really reflected on that in his personal statement.
Well, it's definitely unique. It's interesting when I hear the stories from folks that have they may not be outwardly apparent that they're American per se, but definitely I think that sometimes shock value when they do open their mouth, they hear thoughts. They've been living in the United States, they have a different experience. That in and of itself is a public diplomacy moment. And there's interesting, especially when you're dealing with sensitive issues where you can really utilize that to an advantage. But in having that knowledge base, that cultural awareness, and exhibiting that through your application is tough to do, but important. So don't be humble in sharing that.
So if you've studied abroad somewhere and you really want to go back, your chances of being accepted into that country are lower or higher?
Again, it's what do you want to do there in the country? That's what's really valuable. I mean, think about it in the sense of why would that prior experience be an asset to what you want to do? Did it set groundwork for something? Did it make you see an issue that you hadn't seen before that you want to go back to and continue pursuing? Right? So it's not so black and white of an answer. You need to elaborate on how that prior experience is going to, how you're taking an experience and benefiting, not forgetting that there are preferences for folks that have never had the opportunity to go to that country. So you need to really sell why that prior experience is useful.
The advantage you have from being in that country before is you have a beginning of an understanding of the cultural, and you can use that to make a stronger application. On the other hand, if your application doesn't reflect that cultural understanding, that could actually go against you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not automatically ruled out because you've been there before.
Not at all. Not at all. So, I mean, I'm asking this in the general way because I don't know how extensively you've been in that country.
Well, I studied abroad in Senegal for 6 weeks, and I lived with a host family, so that really helped with the cultural knowledge, and I would have a contact there with the center where I was, I have friends, and made really good personal connections, but I'm wondering if that means that I should, if I was going to pursue something different, but.
No, not at all.
You may have a more compelling reason
Yeah.
to return to Senegal than other people who have no clue what they're getting into.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just itching to find any way to get back there at all. It's just so expensive to fly across the Atlantic.
Right.
How much was the ticket?
Oh my god, it was $1,800 just for round trip.
Dude, also from Morocco to Senegal was expensive, which I don't get. It's just 2 countries down.
They should get a train or something.
A train?
I don't know.
Well, definitely, don't think of it as a detracting. Think of it as an asset. Think about how it
I
benefited.
think it's something that you saw there, that you experienced there, that you want to learn more about,
Right.
and emphasize that as the reason that you want to go back.
Right.
You didn't have enough time to explore whatever in depth.
I mean, 90% of the time, that's how folks get interested in the country.
And I'm a sophomore too, so I wouldn't even be.
So start looking at the
Yeah.
country specifics for Senegal. And one of the things you'll notice is that language proficiency, they highly recommend that you have
Yeah.
French language
Oh,
proficiency.
perfect.
So keep that up.
Yeah.
I was going to be walled off. I'm like, We've been there for 6 weeks. We know 5 words. That's it.
We have a lot of contact at this university with Senegal, because we
Yeah,
have
no,
a
our
development
professor is the
program.
one who took us.
And there's
a.
there's an intensive language component too that you can apply for in as well with your grant. So it's additional funding for intensive language training. But you have to take a test. You have to show that you've established a certain level of the language to be eligible for the additional funds. So.
And then for these, so with your transcripts and stuff, are there certain GPA requirements that they're looking at, or? Because obviously it's rigorous.
Right. So we don't necessarily advertise the actual grade point average because we're looking for the overall package. So if you're showing that you're strong in your academics, your strong overall candidate, that's what counts. So we're looking for overall strengths, not just that you're stellar, that you have a 4.0 GPA. That's not enough. There are, when you're looking at the criteria that I showed in the initial slides, that's just one of many aspects that we're factoring in.
Right.
So don't be deterred if you don't have the perfect GPA. That's not what we're looking for.
And we've had Fulbright candidates who had a rough first year,
Yeah.
and their second and third year were strong,
Right.
and they were on the upward trajectory and have been selected.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not an absolute number,
No.
because they're looking at the whole transcript.
Mhm. I always say there's no harm in it. It's a good experience.
I'd also like to comment that we've had candidates who've applied multiple times and have gotten it on the second or the third
Yes.
application round. Where they were like, the next time I apply, this is what I need to change.
Well, it definitely is an evolving, and actually it's funny because on the faculty side it's exactly the same way too. We get more often after the second attempt or third attempt because they've refined it a little further. And I think they become a little bit more passionate. So don't be deterred by it. There's definitely a wealth of information, and as you saw, a lot of different programs, a lot of different words. I think it's mainly, the hard part is navigating and narrowing it down to which one you want to apply for. So making sure there's a fit to what you're looking for. Don't try to fit yourself to the award. Because that comes through oftentimes with applications, that they meld skew their projects to not be what they really want. It has to be, I think the only benefit is kidding yourself. Look for an award that is fitting your needs. That's it. A lot of food for thought here to contemplate in the next year.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Christina, from your perspective?
Two words to write down is passion and resilience. That's what Fulbright is really looking for. They're looking for people who are passionate about cultural exchange and what they want to do and where they want to do it. And then they're also looking for resilience, because what you propose to do, there'll be hurdles that will happen that you just can't predict. Nicole Fow went to India, and there were things that she experienced that she couldn't anticipate. But by golly, she's a resilient person, and she made lemonade out of lemons and had a great Fulbright experience, where I think a non-resilient person would have packed their bags and come home.
Yeah. So listening to the stories that we do have online, you'll see a pattern there in that.
Yep.
It didn't, if you were promised something, you arrive, it's not there. What do you do?
Plan B, Plan C.
Exactly. Yeah. I know, you have to get into the weeds and then I have some questions once you get into the application. Well, thank you for coming though and listening to the program. I hope it garnered more interest, and even for our visiting students, to please contact the U.S. Embassy or the Commission. I think for both of you that are here, it's the Embassy Public Affairs section for more information. Yeah.